Roughly half a year ago, I made a video called Is Smite Dying? An analysis. I checked different stats for the game and I kind of came to the conclusion that Smite is at least not quickly dying but also not really growing, so probably stagnant with a slight decline. At the time, my results actually pissed off some high-risk employees who said that I was completely wrong, so let's look at all of this half a year later and look at how things have developed. In order to do that, we're gonna look at not only material we had back then, including Mixer, Steam, Twitch, Xbox One, YouTube, and Glassdoor. We're actually gonna exclude some of that because it doesn't really help us here. We're also gonna look at some new stuff, including the Steam top games of the year or the top charts of the year, and also a poll that I recently made. And spoilers ahead, the results were, to me at least, a little bit surprising. The segments that I'm not going to look at here are on one hand Glassdoor, because I don't really think that's beneficial to look at that in regards to how the game is developing. And also I've learned a little bit more about how Glassdoor handles things, and I would say there are more biased things in there than I expected, even though I think there's still some foundation to some of it. And on the other hand, we're also not going to look at the Xbox One charts and just focus on where the game stands on Xbox One at the moment, because we have other information that is actually more relevant in that context that will give us more. And the first thing we're going to look at is the Steam Best of 2018. And that one is very interesting because this basically gives us an insight not only into the player base, but also the revenue of the game. It doesn't give us any numbers, but more than we would otherwise be able to find out. Last year, Smite was in the top performing games in two categories, that is 2017. They had more than 15,000 simultaneous players, and they were among the bronze tier top sellers, meaning they make a decent amount of revenue on Steam. This year, the exact same thing is the case. The game still reached over 15,000 simultaneous players, and it's still in the bronze top sellers. It's a little bit lower in the bronze top seller tier right now, but I'm not sure if this is actually sorted by revenue, because originally when this was first posted for 2018, Smite was actually a lot higher towards the top of it. So I have an impression that these are maybe not going by order, but just in a certain budget range. Interesting enough, Paladins is also in the same area in both. The top sellers in this context, by the way, does not mean top downloads. So this is not about the game being downloaded at all. This is about the revenue the game made. So this is still profits for Hi-Res and obviously for Steam as well. We also have to keep in mind here that not all revenue and not all player base of Smite PC specifically is on Steam. A lot of people are using the external client. Now, what I was wondering about is if this is reflective of the whole year or maybe more of the start of the year, and with the player base going down a little bit and the revenue maybe just staying okay-ish for that tier. And that expectation is unfortunately kind of true if we're looking at the Steam charts. What you can see here is that at the beginning of the year we had a massive spike in players with an increase of 13% and then 8% over 2 months. This was after Smite Worlds. This is always when the hype is the biggest. Plus it's the winter month when not much is going on. So obviously the player base went up a lot. We had peak players of 17,000, 18,000 and even 19,000 afterwards. And obviously that makes it easy to reach over 15,000 simultaneous players. Then afterwards the decline began and there was only 1 month of growth in July really. Other than that, Smite was just continuously losing player base, and the peak players have been going down by roughly, well, depending on the month, up to 5,000 or more like 3,000 most of the time. What you can see here as well is that towards the end of the year we have a little bit of growth. This is because Worlds happened, but apparently this year the spike from Worlds is significantly smaller. This may be because Worlds was another point, this may be because Worlds was not directly just Hi-Res and Smite, but also the whole DreamHack event around it. But either way, what we can see here that in this particular context, the player base is going down gradually, kind of as I predicted. That, however, does not paint the full picture, and it also doesn't show us what's going to happen in the next few months when there's really not much else to do but play PC games in many places in this world. But what about other platforms? Does Twitch reflect this? Yes, or even make it look better. On Twitch, Smite has a concurrent of somewhere between roughly 2,000 to 4,000 viewers, depending on the time of the day and everything. Then obviously at the dead times it also goes down to 1,000. And that's been like that for the whole year basically. If we look at the long-term chart of Smite on Twitch, it's also kind of misleading when you look at it first because the purple spikes look like, okay, the peaks are way higher back in the day. But that's mostly because the Pro League is way more focused on Mixer now and people watch it on Mixer at this point. So Twitch doesn't get as many views when it comes to that. Whereas the cyan line, which is actually important for us, the average viewers for the day, haven't really changed over the years. They're not growing, but they're also not going down. No matter what chart you're looking at here, it's kind of always in the same area. So the viewer base on Twitch for Smite just stayed the same basically. And that, considering the fact that the game is pretty old and that it's moving more and more to Mixer when the competitive scene, is definitely a good thing. We also have to keep in mind that the Mixer deal was renewed, so there must be some profit in that overgoing with Twitch. And that's worth keeping in mind, though at the same time the pro scene was kind of cut down in a way, so who knows how exactly the situation there is, but we're focusing more on the player base anyways. And then we also have my home turf, which is YouTube. Now, YouTube views aren't 100% reflective of what is exactly going on for everyone, but I think they still paint a decent picture of the popularity of the game and its content. Looking at different content creators like we did last time, we can see that with Mythimu, his views and his subs are slowly declining. They're not massively declining, but they're definitely not growing either. With Double J, we can see a similar picture. He had a little bit of a spike this year and actually went up for a while back from when he started, but as of late, they've also been going down. You have to look at the later month here. The same thing is true for me. If you look at my charts, it's exactly the same thing. It's going down towards the later month here. Always having this interest sinking for Smite over the year and then going back up a little bit later in mind as well, obviously. But that doesn't mean that everyone is just on a decline. We have to keep in mind that there are new creators coming into the scene constantly, and some of them are able to grow. They are definitely not growing as explosively as new content creators used to grow once upon a time, but there is still a niche for new creators at least. Or we can, for example, look at Rexy, who this year actually had a massive spike in terms of his views. I am kind of suspecting that this has something to do with the algorithm as well as less dual players being present in the YouTube scene overall. With, for example, Sam the Dude being less active and Shadow not being as active on Twitch anymore in the Smite scene either. So there are definitely factors that led to this, but we can still see that Rexy was able to grow in Smite, but even his views and his subs have been declining as of late. Maybe that's just the spike being over. That's always hard to figure out, but he's doing pretty well, so we can't say that Smite on YouTube is dead. But our info doesn't end here either. We can also look at a chart that Zachary Faria made for a little bit earlier this year. Unfortunately, the new statistics are not included, which would have been interesting with more people being shifted over to Steam through the crossplay that's coming out. But what you can see here is that over the year, the player base of Smite across different modes on PC, which can be fetched through the API system, has been going down a little bit, like gradually more and more and more, from like more towards 17k players to more towards 12k players in Arena, for example, and then a similar picture in Jouster and Conquest. And it's not really too hard of a decline, and we also have to keep in mind that with the last bump, new adventures were introduced, like the 3v3 Joust adventure, Classic Joust, which kind of pushed people to play that mode as well. So overall, the decline is not as bad as it looks here, but you know, it's a little bit of a decline. Now, with all of that in mind, why can I still say that the results surprised me and that some high-risk employees were pissed off about my assessment that the game is on a slow decline? Well, because none of these statistics paints the full picture at all. It leaves out one important or two important factors, and that is other platforms. All the stats that I have almost exclusively focus on PC. Maybe Mixer's an exception here because Mixer's also kind of popular on the consoles, or at least on Xbox, but at the same time, that's kind of a minor thing because the competitive scene is not interesting for everyone anyways, and then the PC competitive scene may not be that interesting for console players. So really a lot of this stuff primarily focuses on PC, maybe with the exception of the content creators who kind of cater to other platforms as well while playing on PC. But guess what? My viewership is mostly on their phones or on their PC when they're watching the video, but even a while ago I was told that I actually have a very high viewership percentage on consoles, a surprisingly high one. I didn't quite get the memo what that actually means at that point. And thinking that I was a channel that primarily focuses on Smite on PC, and my content is mostly primarily catered to PC, even though the console translation of that is often one-to-one, I thought my viewership should mostly be PC because most of the players are on PC and whatnot. That was completely wrong. I made a poll asking you guys on my community tab which platform you primarily play on. And the poll got 13,000 votes, so this should be representative of my viewership in a pretty good way, considering that I have usually around that amount of views, a little more, a little less depending on the video, but it reflects it pretty well. Now obviously not everyone who voted here was necessarily one of my subscribers. Sometimes those votes also get on the main platform, but it still gives you a good idea of what my channel consists of. And my channel consists of 30% PC players, 36% Xbox One players, and 33% PS4 players. My expectation was more along the line of getting maybe 50, 60-ish% PC players and the rest splits between Xbox One and PS4, and I was completely wrong in that regard. Now you can make the argument that maybe some of my content is more catered towards newer players, but that wouldn't matter for Xbox One anymore at this point anyways, because Xbox One has been out for a long time, so the old new players on that platform are not new players. I would debate that argument anyways, but that's another story. But even if it was true and my channel was just catered towards new players, then it would mean that most of the new players are not coming to PC. I just think it's more reflective of the overall player base. There are just more console Smite players than PC players at this point. And I wouldn't trust this poll alone on this. I would be kind of doubtful still, all things considered. But there's something that Hi-Rez did that kind of confirms that this is the case. They translated the console UI over to PC one-to-one, and it doesn't really work on PC, and they were well aware of the fact that it doesn't, and they said they just want to push it through for crossplay and whatnot. The reason is, the bigger player base, the bigger market is very likely to sit between the two consoles that we have right now than it is to sit on PC. And then we also have the Switch coming out, which will easily be able to navigate with the same menu, even though the menu is kind of crap for anyone. But at the end of the day, those are the platforms that seem to be the growing ones. So I think my original expectation towards Smite PC kind of has proven itself, and it is on a decline, but I've completely underrated the other platforms, and it seems that on other platforms, Smite is at least doing well, if not growing to a certain degree. So this is going to make crossplay very interesting, especially with the additional growth potential through the Switch in the near future. Unless everyone on that platform sticks to Smash Brothers, and I can't blame them for that one. What we unfortunately can't see in these charts are the developments in different regions, especially OCE apparently has been going down a lot, but then again crossplay may kind of alleviate that problem a little bit. In conclusion, I no longer think that Smite is on a decline overall. I think it's more the PC scene that is just dwindling down a little bit, and maybe the competitive scene as well, but I think the growth is just in other places that I didn't expect it to be before. How much that evens out overall is hard to say or balances out, seeing that many of the numbers that are PC related don't really change, but I think it seems that Smite still has quite a while to go at this point. And that's it for this video. I hope this was interesting and insightful. If you're new to the channel, feel free to smash that subscribe button. Also, quick shout out to the current sponsors Jado85, Richard Thompson, The Edgy Potatoes Edgy, R. Rowers, and Kenny Olsen. Appreciate you guys very much. See you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.